What's up, Devin?
Not much, brother. How you doing, JLove?
Doing great. Well,
Yeah,
as well as can be expected after a tough pre-loss. I know you have a lot of thoughts on it, and let's
yeah.
get into it, man.
All right. Well, obviously, it's been a phenomenal season thus far. So if I were to have told you, like, November 15th, Purdue be like 23-3 and alone by a game and a half in the Big Ten, I think, and winning the Mountain Invitational, I would be like, okay, that's a pretty damn good season thus far. But then, like, if anyone whoever watched the game today, especially Purdue fans, like, longtime Purdue fans as well, we happened to go on the road and play at Ohio State today. And, they were unranked, and beginning of the season, they were ranked at a point or very close to it. I believe they were ranked. Supposed to like be projected to be like a pretty decent NCAA tournament team. And then because of last year's shortcomings and having a very disappointing season, and then Chris Holtman, with the talent level they have right now, just hasn't got it done the last 2 years. He's had some injury issues last year. I don't know if it's quite as severe they were like this year. But come in, I think 13-11, and disappointing season for them for sure. So after the Wisconsin game early this week, they decided to fire the coach. So you and I had both talked about this.
You certainly did on Thursday.
we talked about it on Thursday. We were like, if there's anything that can spark a team and unite them, it just seems to be like an interim coach, like this us versus the world mentality kicks in. I think players get settled into a routine. And if the culture at the time is like, well, we're getting our NIL money, we're, getting everything we want in college, more or less, and it doesn't look like this ship is going where we want it to go. Let's just make the most of it and, go out there and just whatever happens.
Yeah.
Well,
and frankly, it's a short tryout for a lot of the players that do want to be there.
Yeah.
A lot of players that maybe were in the doghouse with the previous regime.
Absolutely.
And it's a fresh start for them. I mean, so you kind of see how this happens. It could be any number of factors. I don't pretend to be inside the locker room at Ohio State, but a lot of human nature, and I think it's just a crazy different dynamic with, like you said, the NIL situation and how we don't have at a school like Ohio State. We don't have what we need here. We can go get it in the portal. Those checks will be written, and I have stories about that from Ohio State. And
I know.
They are a major domino. So, I mean, a lot of those kids, if they want to be there, they're going to show up at games like this, especially against, the best team in the nation. So,
yeah,
it's a tough spot to be in.
Absolutely. Another other thing is obviously they've got a very good tradition of basketball as well, but it always is going to play second fiddle to football there. So, like, the football team, they'd almost barely wouldn't let that kind of thing go on for like a few games, half a year. Like there's no way they're going to be like, yeah, we'll just get in the playoff next year or maybe a bowl game. Like, they don't play around. Whereas the basketball team, and it used to take a lot more time to build a program, but now because of the portal and now the last 5-6 years, COVID year action, you can instantly, if you can recruit, you can almost instantly make your team relevant as far as at least putting, Jimmy and Joe's out there.
Yeah.
Now, the biggest problem now you have is there's some bidding going on. There's other things. But if you don't develop a culture to go along with what these talented players do and they don't buy into it, it's just like a rudderless ship. You're like, you sure you can get it done. You might have the biggest Mercury outboard engine of all time. But if you don't have someone that's like, hey, brings it all together, then it's the talent. I mean, that can be seen across the landscape. Several Kentucky teams, some Duke teams, some Kansas teams, a few Memphis teams, and so there's, USC. I mean, these people have talented players. And if you don't meld, or mesh well with who's already there, Or maybe if Florida's there, they're there to get theirs, and winning is not really first and foremost. It takes a conglomeration of people with tremendous chemistry and excellent skill and talent to make a good basketball team, which is so anyways, going back to that long-winded point, we had really talked and we said, I bet, we thought this game could be very cool, a lot closer than what the experts thought. I know it ended up being like an 8.5, 9-point spread. I would have stayed away from that or really gone the Ohio State side. Maybe that would have been an emotional hedge for me being a Purdue fan. I could have been like, hey, hit Ohio State money line, and if Purdue loses, then at least, I cash out, right? But
and that's a tough one from a betting standpoint. And I think eventually on our channel here, I think that we're gonna offer some of our insights as far as betting. And you're obviously phenomenal at it, but you're absolutely right. Like, that's one you don't want to touch. Like, everything tells you Purdue is more than capable of covering that spread and then some, but because of the coaching change and just the human nature of it, and maybe Purdue, and this isn't in their DNA this year, but maybe they look at it like, okay, we got an easy one here, and there's just so many factors. You just stay away from that one if you're betting, and good for you if you got this one right, but it's one you don't feel good about either way. It can go either way for you, and you can't be surprised.
Well, Purdue jumped out 7-0 lead, and I think Trey Kaufman-Renn had 7 of the first 9 points, or maybe the first 5 or 7. It was like bang, bang, bang. And, if you tell me that Trey Kaufman-Renn has a couple rebounds, 7 points at the under, 16-minute, first media timeout, I think Purdue's cruising along. I think at the end of the game, if I were to tell you that Purdue made 18 of 18 or 20 or however, it was I should know this, but 20 of 20, perfect the free throw line with, not just on 3 of 3, respectable amount of points, and lost, I think you'd be mind blown. And the funny thing is, and I actually did a little research on this, Purdue actually has been perfect from the free throw line in the last, I don't know how many, last maybe a couple of decades. For the last 6 times they've done that, which is not easy to do. And in some cases it was on higher volume, but might have been 6 of 6 or 8 of 8. This was the most, I believe, that they did it on. And they are 1-5 in those games, which you think man, if you make 16 of 16 free throws in a game on the road, which we made more than that, but I'm saying if you made even 10 of 10, you're doing something, and unfortunately with this particular Purdue team, and even last year as well, although this one is different, I think much different. But if you're allowed to just go in and foul Edey without any consequence, I mean, obviously he gets fouled several times a game that doesn't get called. You can't call them all, obviously. You have to really call the egregious ones, or the ones that actually hinder a basketball play or move where it's blatantly obvious. Have to call those. Now, it's not our fault that other teams in the country don't have a Zach Edey. He's one of one in all-time basketball history, really, even going back to somebody like Shaq, because at least with him, you could steal some points, you might not make some free throws, whereas Zach Edey, pretty good, low 70% free throw shooter. So it's and a lot of times he makes the basket too. Now, of course, a lot of times they'd foul Shaq so hard somehow, he wasn't going to get a chance to rip the
power. Shaq is a 7-footer with athleticism and power like you wouldn't believe, but Edey's skillfulness and length are just it's different. I don't want to make this at any point to us people coming at us with
the foul discrepancy.
I get it. We're not saying that Edey is better than Shaq. That's not what we're saying as far as the center. It's just it's a different kind of cover in the college game. I completely agree with you. He's a cheat code for sure.
Well, you look at Zach Edey's background, as is well documented by now for the people in the know, but he was a pitcher and he played ice hockey.
It's crazy.
So the footwork it takes to be that to be coordinated enough to play ice hockey, and he's been that tall forever. So it's getting used to doing that is I couldn't do it now, Even if I want, even in like my best shape, I couldn't get, and I was very athletic. I could never be on ice skates. I would be a nightmare to kill myself, probably stab myself, with an ice skate and call it a day. It'd be horrible.
6'3", 6'4", and I will tell everybody I'm not built for that.
Yeah.
Then you take it, you add a foot to that, and it's just crazy. And
a whole foot.
It's crazy.
And then, and then pitching and all that. So so he were like, which is why a lot of people, like they tell their kids to kind of like, if you learn like multi-sports, to learn different, like work different muscles and stuff early on, and then really focus in one that is your sport is like probably ideal, unless you're like a, freak of nature, like Bo Jackson or somebody like that, where, you're getting into like, 3 or 4 people all the time that really fit that criteria. But, it's just one of those things where because of his coordination, athleticism, and his height and his skill, and then also Matt Painter brings this up all the time. He was a 0-star recruit. Now he played at a very good like academy, played at IMG. So he played at like a phenomenal, like, like high school career, like where everybody that played there goes and plays major D1 or pro, or, there are a lot of pros there. He's backing up pros, not getting any play, but every day in practice, he's doing this. But he didn't start playing basketball until like 7th, 8th grade, 8th, 9th grade. So like, this is like really his 6th or 7th year basketball. So anyone that's an elite level recruit that was already on that team, all of those kids were told 7, 8 years prior to that, like how great they were going to be their whole time, going back to probably where they're like 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, all the way through high school. Zach Edey's head was not filled with any of that, BS at all, like none. So like when he was recruited, and Brandon Brantley's phenomenal with the bigs. He has been for over a decade now at Purdue as assistant coach. When he was recruited, he didn't come along with all the baggage of a recruit that has that kind of upside. Plus, he's still learning and coachable. Like if you listen to him in an interview now, it's like, oh, there's lots of things I can get better on. And he gets better at those. If you see the transformation for him in like first year to now, they were saying he could barely catch a pass. Now it's like, I mean, it's just unstoppable. And even if he's National Player of the Year last year, like this year, he is like markedly better and going to be National Player of the Game almost certainly. So, I just think that's like a big component. So I don't know what you extrapolate on that as well, but.
Yeah, no, it's an incredible. I think it's something that because no one else has anything like it, they don't like hearing about it. So I think that a lot of that background of Zach Edey, unfortunately, is relegated to the region, not so much the national thing. And it's unfortunate because it is a unique, and there are a lot of lessons to it. I mean, not many, if any, kids have those physical tools, but the approach is, I think, something that a lot of kids and, quite frankly, coaches that get paid a lot of money could learn from. What is now likely the 2-time Player of the Year and hopefully a catalyst to a deep tournament run here.
Absolutely.
And it's in this era of NIL and just uncertainty and in the infancy of what college sports looks like now. I think it's a pretty cool story. And I think it's something that I would like to see get more traction. And hopefully, we get much further along in the tournament so that these stories can be told and just kind of really it exemplifies, I think, what the sport should be, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know. So, I guess regarding this particular game, Chris Holtman's been fired. Interim coach, I think it's Jack Diebler. His brother was a stud, a total sniper at Ohio State, like a few years back. Phenomenal. And so he's familiar with the program. He didn't play. I think he played at Valpo, but family, the family is very well connected to Ohio State, obviously.
Yeah.
And so you just get a situation where, you got somebody from connected to Ohio State where it's like, go out there and play for Ohio State. Go out there and play hard. None of the stuff that matters now. You got a chance to knock off the number 2 team in the country. And so it's like we're used to getting everybody's best effort. Obviously, after the loss, another court storming. I believe that's 10 now, 10 of 11 in the last 3 years, and which is great. And actually didn't hear any incidents about it for a change. So it seems like they're getting it right after a few years, hopefully. But it's just one of those things where we knew we were kind of, as fans that were really in the know, knew we were like up against it. Even though we're like much better team than Ohio State, but it's like if you let teams, hang around and get to the shots that they want, and you're struggling in certain departments, or they take something away, like in this case, they came way out of the 3-point line and try to make us beat us inside. And so, the recipe is out there to beat Purdue. Obviously, it has been for the last few years into a tournament. Although this team is better and different than those teams, there's still some things that pop up because Edey is so dominating. Anyone in America who any coach in America who had Zach Edey would do exactly what Purdue is doing. And some people's teams wouldn't really like that. You can obviously, if you were a player and you were a really high level player, and you're like, well, you're an awesome 3-point shooter. You shoot, 38% on high volume, but this guy shoots like 65% and gets fouled constantly and fouls out half their team. So, that's going to allow you to get to the free throw line if you buy in to take your 85% free throw shooting to the line and get free points. Or when you drive in, it's like every time you get fouled, you're going to be in the double bonus at a certain point.
Yeah.
With Zach Edey. And that's, so systematically, some people don't really like how Purdue does things, but it really is a brilliant way to do it. The difference is this year's Purdue supporting cast has been much, much better at shooting 3-pointers and working the ball and doing different things and a dominating rebounding team with other people not including Edey. And unfortunately, in today's game, didn't shoot very well from 3. Zach Edey obviously typically gets fouled quite a bit. That's a usual thing. But, it's like a perfect storm, almost called like the triumvirate, where it's like Purdue turns the ball over 14 plus times, does not hit that many threes, didn't really shoot that many threes either. And then, they're kind of getting away with some very aggressive play on Zach Edey.
Yeah.
I believe there was 3 or 4 people with 4 fouls against them, so they didn't quite foul out. So if that game goes to overtime, probably in a bad place because then it's like you've got no one to stop them at all.
Yeah.
And they were just mounting and mounting and mounting. And we really I think we went to the free throw line like 20 times. And, it's just one of those things where that's actually helped us stay in the game, the excellent free throw shooting. But, you get on you're everybody's Super Bowl, you get on their home court, you let them get some confidence, get their head up. The second and third scorer, Battle goes out there. I mean, Thornton's a stud. He's always been a very good player. You let Battle get his head up with a tough 3, and then all of a sudden they think they can make anything. And if you talk to anyone that's ever played the game, if you let a shooter get their head up, or even if you foul them sometimes and you let a shooter get to the free throw line where they can get that rhythm and watch the ball go in,
yeah,
it's a problem,
It is.
And you just get in that situation. So sort of a perfect storm, unfortunately. Once again, people will get all the Farley Dickinson talk. We'll get that you've lost to double-digit seeds. Mind you, one of those was in the Sweet 16, so that might even be more embarrassing in its own way. But it's like tournament play is very wild. It's like if the right dominoes fall, you can have the easiest path in the world or the most difficult path in the world.
Well, that is a great way to put it. Tournament play is wild. But I think that it can go two ways. And I've given a lot of thought there. We've had a lot of time to think about this since Purdue's exit last year. Good. veteran teams that have experience, which Purdue, does have, and at this point, you can either, the game's either going to slow down for you, and you can dictate pace and follow through with your game plan, or it can get out of control. And I think that's what we saw last year. Yeah. But there's in the moment, it's the end of the world. But if you bring those players back and you're a year older, it's incredibly valuable. And I think that if you're a casual fan or even a pundit and you're saying, here we go again with Purdue after a 4-point loss to Ohio State with all these factors that they're not looking, below the surface of, you probably need to do something else with your time. It's just
really agree.
It's just a very simplistic way. And to be completely honest with you and everyone, I think that if you're making that claim, it just seems like you have a lot of extra time to talk about Purdue for no reason. When you haven't gone out of your way to talk about all the incredible things they've done all year.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. And honestly, it's pretty transparent for a lot of people. And I think that Purdue has an opportunity to do something special and make some people look really foolish, which is going to be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I've been keeping receipts of all those people on Twitter. I mean, I usually chime back in, obviously, fairly often. Sometimes I'll just lay back and, sit back and watch people, run their mouth off. And, I get I actually don't understand the vitriol and the hatred, to be honest with you, because it's like Purdue has never really done anything that bad to anybody. It's an excellent academic school. It's been a historical, very, very good, basketball team, all time. Like, to your point, all the great things, that Purdue has done. We this year became ranked number 1 for the 3rd straight year in a row. The only Big Ten team in history to do that ever. Go
win a bar bet with that.
Go win a bet with that. You make a lot of money. You can turn all that in and then bet against Purdue every round of the tournament until you've lost all that money again. It'd be great.
Piss it away.
Yeah, piss it away. It's fine. So, it's just one of those things where it's like they're doing, in my opinion, obviously, this is where it'd be nice when we revisit this at the end of the season, hopefully, knock on wood. Like, Purdue, honestly, in a way, is becoming, in my opinion, the new Villanova or the new Virginia, really more like a more Villanova, because they're really way more up tempo than Virginia. Virginia did it really mainly with defense, and and they both had Hall of Fame level coaches, and that's a big deal. But it's like those Bennett and Wright did things the right way. They won the right way, and they're and so it's like all these teams that are historical blue blood teams, your Kansas's, your Duke, your Kentucky's, North Carolina, they'll win a title, or they'll usually sneak in and make a Final Four every so often. But it's I think Purdue's biggest problem is we get over that hurdle this first time. I think it's going to be, and I might get beat up for this on the interwebs. That's fine. I can live with that. But if Purdue breaks through and makes the Final Four, or especially wins it all this year, Purdue's going to be taking over that role as a team that you're man, I better just go ahead and pencil them in the second weekend. If you go back before some of these instances, Purdue made the Sweet 16 3 straight years in a row. Even when Michigan was dominating and stuff in the Big Ten, Michigan State's always normally, has been good for a long time now. And so we're doing historical things. And I know you and I have talked about this, but most people have no idea that Purdue has a winning record all time against every team in the Big Ten heads up, ever, which is insane. That is what the Kansases, the North Carolinas, the UCLAs, and the Kentuckys can say in their conference. I mean, speaking of I don't think even UConn can say that. That's probably somebody like Syracuse, even though UConn has more national championships than Syracuse does, But like if you look at like a winning record over every team against you, in your conference, it's insane. And then the other thing is like the most Big Ten championships, 25, and will be 26 more than likely here in a few weeks. And then lastly, Purdue, this is a very little notice. You could throw this on another bar bet and make a fortune. Purdue has the second most first team All-Americans all time in men's basketball, only to Kansas. Second most all time. And we're going to be adding another All-American first team this year for sure. So, Kansas might also, but if they don't, we're just going to be gaining on them. I think we might be tied with North Carolina, but no matter what, we'll still be second place all time, tied at worst for first team All-Americans. That's insane. That's really a blue blood. We just need national titles. That's it.
Yep. We need some deep runs. And the thing about it is, as a parent, we don't always know why stuff happens, when it happens. And it's hard to explain that to our kids and to kind of keep their head up. But to me, in this instance with Purdue, it's just, you've done it the right way this whole time and, stay the course. And I think that's really the next, 5 to 10 years, that's going to be a program, Purdue and a program like Purdue that may be out there. The advantage that they have, your traditional quote unquote blue bloods, your North Carolinas, your Kansases, your Dukes, they are so used to that glory and winning and that high standard, which is, great. That's why you're a blue blood, but you will start to press to hold on to that and go outside of your culture to hold on to that as long as you can. Or if you're a coach that's taken over in that program, the pressure to uphold that is incredible. And you're going to start doing things outside of your norms. And I feel
like there's a team very close by Purdue that has done that very same thing.
And you just
not many names.
Yeah. And it's just I take a step back and I look at those things. And those are things we can all relate to in life. And you really cannot go wrong with just putting your head down and grinding and doing it the right way, and just understanding it's going to pay off. You do it the right way. You're true to it. You're going to be where you want to be when it matters and when you're supposed to be there. You just will. So, in the moment, it's hard to understand that. Like last year at tournament time, it was, what is happening? Here we are again. And it's just, but fast forward, credit to them. And that's proof of it. Like Purdue didn't go away. Purdue, came right back and got better,
Yeah.
A couple years ago, you lose Jaden Ivey after an early exit. And, truthfully, it was like, okay, we may actually be better.
Yeah.
And I look to next year at the prospect of not having Edie on this team. And we've talked about the kids coming in at length, like they very well may be better next year. Athletically, they definitely will be.
Yeah.
And if they're coachable kids and they can contribute right away, there's a possibility that we're, record wise, and because a program with standards and culture has been created, we're in a better spot this time next year is feasible. That's crazy.
It is absolutely feasible. And it does sound crazy. Just like you said, like, oh, well, the baby boomers are gone. What are they ever going to do? Fast forward, like whoever, like Trevion, like Biggie, like he doesn't, pick an All-American. They lose him. Carson Edwards, we watched his brilliant career come to an end, unfortunately, in person. And it's like, man, it's going to be, and they might have like a down year or they really haven't actually had too many of those, but it's like they reload. And I can tell you right now, the Big Ten will be tired of seeing Braden Smith for 2 more years. I can tell you that. So if nothing else, we're going to be returning. Yeah, I think you can make an argument will be the best point guard returning in the country next year. Yeah. I mean, there's an argument he's the best point guard right now. And, that's when he doesn't make the koozie list, but he makes, the National Player of the Year list, So that's
the thing is
pretty wild.
and just to kind of nail that point home, like these kids that are in this program and the kids that he's going after, you're not going to get the same kid back next year. You're not going to get the same Braden next year.
Exactly.
You didn't get the same Braden this year because, compared to last year, because his ass is in the gym grinding. And that's what it is. Like, to be a part of this team, all those players. And I can tell you firsthand, Braden, he's going to pick his game apart with the assistance of his coach and his trainers. And he's going to get to work, and you're going to get an improved player next year. And that's just what it is. It's a really cool thing to watch as far as this program and where it's going. But yeah, so a 4-point loss to Ohio State in their house after after a coaching change. And again, the target is always going to be on Purdue's back from here to their last game that they play this year, because that's just what it is. They're the best team in the nation, top to bottom. They have the most unstoppable weapon in basketball. They're going to have a target on their back. They're going to get everyone's best shot, and they're going to have to prove it. But when you recruit these kids the way that they do, and they have a program, they wouldn't have it any other way. So they're going to be ready for everyone's best shot and when it matters. So I'm not going to lose any sleep tonight.
Yeah. I mean, it stinks, but you've coached, I've coached. I mean, not on near that level, but if you understand hoops, it's like anything in life in general. Like, you learn nothing. You learn very little from like big time successes.
Yeah.
But you learn a ton from failures or whatever. Like, if Purdue would have somehow won this game in overtime, in a way, it's almost more like, oh man, we got away with it. And so like, it doesn't put you on edge.
Yeah.
But when you go there and you dissect this film, I know you've dissected it some as well today,
I did.
When you go back and you look and like, man, if I would have boxed out right here, we would have won that game. 4-point game.
If I can see it, Painter is in there. To your point, they're gonna learn from today. They're gonna get more from today, losing and giving the coach the opportunity to have the ultimate "I told you so's" and let me hold this over your head for a day or two and make you think that your minutes are at risk here. Like, that's the other thing. Like, Penny Hardaway is not in Memphis doing that. These blue bloods, like you're not gonna be able to get through to these kids.
No.
Not that they're bad kids or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, this is what it is. This is not news when they go into the film room and they're ripped apart and held accountable.
Yeah.
As opposed to where it gets into crunch time for some of these other schools, and like, we can't lose that. We can't do this. And that's the first time you're hearing it from the coach in the film room. You're just like, now it's going to be a divisive thing. I'm telling you, and we did a podcast the other night that will probably never see the light of day.
Not till we're way down the road.
You're gonna have to pay a lot for it out there when we become famous, and it may be worth it, honestly.
Yeah, but, we will get sued, maybe, but it'll be worth it.
But one of the points we made was, after the Minnesota win, there's just what's really encouraging is I know that they're in a spot now where they're polished and they can find little things, incremental things this time of year to continue to get better and build on good habits. And there are so few bad habits that it's going to spell success when it matters in the tournament. Yeah. And I think that is very exciting. With that being said, I would like to touch on a couple players, and I'm very curious to get your take. We'll just kind of go one at a time. And
sure.
First one, just looking at today's film, and this really, we can big picture, season long, what you think of these players, and today what you saw from them, and finally going forward. The first one, Trey Kaufman-Marin. I will, full disclosure, let everyone know. I saw this kid in the Indiana All-Star game live for the first time when Braden was I just happened to be there because Braden from Westfield, where I live, was a junior playing against the seniors. And I was blown away. So I went ahead and watched him against the Kentucky All-Stars. He just pros move different. I've seen pros in the gym, personally played with them, and just the way they move. And I think that he has that. He just pops with the plays he can make. I think the world of his upside, and it just really hasn't translated. So full disclosure, the reason that that's up there, that's why I'm a groupie. I think that I think he's an underrated overall kid. I think that he came in with Caleb first, and he was kind of second fiddle, that kind of thing, which Mr. Basketball, I get all that, but just I think he has elements to his game and his frame that he could be special if he had the right situation and guidance and work ethic. That's all up for debate. But the things I saw today, in just watching film, he came out hot. What are your thoughts of that? Like with him, like to me, he looked competent and aggressive.
Well, when so they did a lot of like high-low action. They've been doing that more and more. And at the beginning of the year, it looked like just a train wreck nightmare. And you're like, well, once again, how are they going to get this to work? And as the season goes on, you realize, okay, well, Zach Edey's actually getting out there pretty athletic. That really helps that, because you got to be able to kind of almost go back the other way with it in a way to, if you get him underneath in the block, then it's like, well, man, like we designed all this to stop Zach Edey, not Trey Kaufman-Renn and Zach Edey. So if they switch, it's like, because of his mobility, a totally different cover, and if you principally collapse on Trey Kaufman-Renn, it has a much different result than collapsing on Zach Edey, because first of all, Trey Kaufman-Renn they both can kick out of it, but there's just a little bit different kind of like length and athleticism involved, as far as like Edey's very, very big, you will get it, but like Kaufman-Renn can get rid of it a little bit quicker, in my opinion. So like you have that dynamic as far as like both, being like one on the block, one up high and or, like them passing to each other. Like last year just couldn't really happen with the dynamic. Renn, another year older now. I mean, you got to realize still a sophomore, still in the class of like, so he has a lot of learning to do on this level and some growth and maturity. So, as I've seen, he actually can go out and really shoot 3-pointers, and he doesn't really do it yet or that often. And I think a lot of it's just like, if he were to get in position to where that was asked of him from Purdue, he would be so much better at it with just the opportunity. But we just spray the ball out to like 5, 6, 7 other people, and it's just not, it's just a reps thing, And I would like to think that, Matt Painter's holding back some things for wrinkles at times. I've actually seen it. I've seen things not necessarily I've seen things revolving, Trey Kaufman-Renn, where they do different wrinkles. Like the other day, they actually played like a kind of makeshift zone under Matt Painter. It's like basically never happened before. And it didn't really totally stop the team by any measure, right? But it threw a wrinkle where they had to think about it. It's like, well, we've never seen this on film from them. Like, what do we do, coach? Like, was it like where you almost had to like, paralysis by analysis, and and it just was like they only did it a few times, and it was almost like we don't even know how to like function, like seeing that, because like you just never see it from a Purdue team. So there's like one small example of them switching and doing that, and then kind of like what you're talking about, some high-low ball action. I've seen it a lot where Zach Edey will get like kind of a high handoff. And just the threat of, like it happened today too, the threat of Edey rolling to the basket just forces that open lane, left-handed dribble. Like, oh, you want to like, they say like Braden Smith might not have a very good left hand. Well, it's like, well, if you force him to his left and you make him go left all the way to the rack, he is going to burn you every single time, And I was thinking side steps, side step, shoot the ball as well. And that really helps you in your pull-up game. Like, because if you can go away from the defender, even though he's got a little bit more size on Braden Smith in most cases, that gives you that little freedom, that little separation you need to pull up and make it, and he just practices that relentlessly. I know, because you can see it in the game. You can see it in the games. But going back to TKR, like he basically just he's more confident when he gets the ball on the block. And in games where like Edie has not been in or has been in foul trouble, this game didn't really apply to that per se. But like when he has done that in the past, like he actually has not quite Edie like numbers, but he certainly is more than efficient with his time. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he always crashes the board really hard. He does a lot of great productive things when he's in there. I think occasionally the offense bogs down depending on who's in the game with all the other players. But like, I'm actually looking forward to seeing his growth as a player as he goes on. I'm probably almost as high as you on his upside. I don't think he gets utilized in a way for that to be showcased at this time.
Yeah.
Because it's not really needed from him, really. But I think it needs to be needed from him. But it's just like to add another wrinkle. Like, hey, flare him out to a 3-pointer, let him drill it in, in space and momentum, and it's like, oh my God, we can't guard. Like, if you get TKR out there hitting 3-pointers, you can't guard Purdue.
He's 6'9". He's probably 230, 240.
Very strong.
He's very strong.
Yeah.
He, like you said, he does have a good shot. A lot of people don't see that because he's not put in that role at this moment. He has a stroke, a competent stroke. And if you're putting in the work, he's very capable of being a 35 to 40% 3-point shooter. And if you put volume to 35 to 40%, that's, you're an 18 to 20 point scorer. I'm not saying he's ever going to be that at Purdue, but that if he needed to be that, he could be that for this team.
And you got to guard that.
Absolutely. The other thing is that popped out to me when I say, he's different, he moves different. Athleticism is, anybody can see that. But what I see is decision-making for basketball players in today's game. Can you play positionless? Being 6'9", if you can guard multiple positions, if you can handle in transition, and you can handle in tight spaces, and you can stretch the floor with shooting, those are just so valuable. And it's not common because you cannot just teach 6'9", much like you can't teach, Edie's height, but 6'9", I think that having that skill set, those don't just grow on trees. And I think that when I take a look at his body language, early in the year, last year, I mean, young player, he may have doubts that he can do that at this level. I'm telling you, with the kids that I was watching him play against in AAU or, in the All-Star games, and he's doing it in that spot, you can do it here. And you can. It's just being empowered to do it. And I'm not going to sit here and say the offense needs to run through him, but I think that what I saw today and what I've seen, in spots over the last, dozen games is he's making great decisions where he's not just catching and going up, rushing, shots. There was a play I saw today. It was a high post entry pass to Ren, and he pulled the handoff to Braden coming to the right, where everybody wants to push Braden to go to his right. And, everyone bid on that to where Braden cleared. And what resulted was Edie sliding in the post, sealing his a smaller man on a switch and getting an easy shot for Edie. Edie actually missed it, but to Trey, he followed that, got an offensive rebound, and got a foul call on him. I mean, those are
And
those
made the
are
free
things
throws.
that we talked about film. When he sees that on film and all of his teammates see that on film and they start to see, like, hopefully they're encouraging him, like, we can use that, man. Like, we need
Yeah.
that. Like, you're
Yeah.
different. And I just think whether it's at the 4 position, if they're playing small ball, he can play 5 if Edey goes out. I think that he can play on the wing. I think that if he gets a rebound, he can push and make a play. For someone flaring out to the wing for a 3-point shot. I mean, and he's a rim runner at that point after pushing the ball. I mean, there's just so much that can be exploited if you're have a size and you can do all those things on the court. And that's why I will, till his final game at Purdue, hold him in that regard. Because I know what he can do. I've watched him do it, and he shows these flashes of it. It's hard when you have All-Americans, generational players, it's easy to get lost in that shuffle, and it's hard to really, to really nail down what your role is and be comfortable in that. And then, I don't feel bad for him though, because I think that regardless of his numbers at Purdue, he's going to have an opportunity to make money doing this. Which
he will for sure.
And I do, and knowing people that know him, he's a good kid from what I understand. He's a hard worker. He's a gym rat, and I think it's enjoyable for him to show what he can do in a gym. When it's just him. That he likes that, and that's really the precipice of all this. Trying to be great at this. If you have that, you don't just settle on being incredibly talented. You want to get it in the gym and work and carve out a role for you, what you believe you can do. I think he's there. It's just, I hope it shows up later in the year. There may be a situation where, Edey's in foul trouble. God forbid someone, pulls something.
Yeah, sure.
Crazy. I think that whether it's Edey or whether it's, someone on the wing, I think that he could be a very valuable piece that is not even thought about, like you said.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about him. The other side of that, the other person I wanted your thoughts on was Fletcher Lawyer.
Yes.
What do you think? Because I'll be honest with you. I mean, I was a little busy today and I wasn't able to catch the game live, but I saw just everybody coming for his head on social media that are Purdue fans, and it's a tough spot. And I don't think it's a simple answer. I think there's a lot of things to it, and I'd love to hear where you stand on it, on where he's at and where he's going, what should happen.
Sure. Well, I think that first of all, Purdue, just like any other fan base, is more than capable of eating their own, whether it be social media, Facebook, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. We'll call it Twitter forever. I'll call it Twitter forever. Yeah. He's the next man. I'm a Twitter guy. I Twitter Pate. Anyway, so also this is us just in the beginning here, but it's nice to see people not say Purdue needs to improve their free throw shooting for the first time in ages in a basketball game. That's one less complaint for sure. So that doesn't have to be discussed this time for a 1 of 1. It sounds like probably.
Yeah, well, Adam's going to follow to that when they miss their next one. So
yeah, exactly.
Ready for that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that'll be the next podcast without a doubt. But, absolutely. But as far as Fletch lives,
does he? That's the question.
Fletch may live here, but defense may not live here. Sometimes when he's on the court,
not what I saw on film today.
I think he's actually a tremendous player. He is a very fiery person. You can tell he does not lack for confidence. I think him stepping into almost immediate success and being absolutely depended on for point production last year Uh, probably put him in a place where expectations got very high very quickly for him.
Yeah.
Certainly somebody who I feel like, and this happens with everybody as they get in college typically. Some people support better, stronger weights than others. Maybe he doesn't have a frame that just supports that as well as some other people. He might be one of those people that can just like eat a trillion calories, go lift whatever, and just doesn't pack it on. I mean, I've seen cases like that, but probably I could stand to, get some more strength in the off season. I don't know what his regimen is. I'm sure he puts time in at it, hours doing lots of those things. I don't know him like that at all. But like, he does get attacked, really sought after on the defensive end because of certain liabilities. I do feel like he usually is where he needs to be, but he just gets bullied and pushed out of the way at times, and then I think some people allow their offensive game affect their defensive game. If you looked at the games where Purdue has really thrived this year,
yeah,
Fletcher Wayers has actually some outstanding numbers when the lights really got bright, like the Arizona game, Alabama. He is turned up. Tennessee, he is really been a integral part of Purdue beating those teams, and some of that is when you scout it figure you can get him after on the defensive end. Some more of that stuff's out now. But I think the other thing is when I've seen him really make an impact in those games, he was getting steals. He was getting in passing lanes. Small things.
That's how you have to do it. If you're not good at the point of attack as a guard, a longer guard that maybe you don't have the quickest lateral movement, which that's actually a lot more common than people realize. Just some people get shit on a little more than others.
Yeah.
And that's actually pretty common, but you're absolutely right. If you can supplement, first of all, if you're going to be on the court, you better be a threat to score. So the last thing I want to see from Fletcher is him to stop shooting and let the defensive side of the ball dictate what he can be offensively, even if you have a bad shooting game, which he's had a few. That's fine. You make the defense, you have to figure out a way to be a net positive, especially if you're quote unquote a defensive liability, which I don't think he has to be a defensive liability. I think that having a back line of Edey and really any number of other frontline players we have, the habits we have with players like Gillis that talk and we rotate, and obviously Painter
Jones.
Yeah, those are habits. Those aren't just those don't go on and off. Those are there.
Yeah.
But so I think that he doesn't have to be a defensive liability. I think he has great length to where he can play in the passing lanes. What I saw today, though, is just turning your back, hedging too much, just not being very disciplined. I mean, I'm not going to go into it if I can't show what I'm talking about. There are some instances where it was very much self-inflicted, has very little to do with ability, just kind of lapses. Yeah. And that's actually, if you think about it, a lot more encouraging than I just don't think he can get it done. He might be unplayable on defense. I don't think he's that.
No, not at all.
And I kind of go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, if I may interject here, when Raphael Davis was at Purdue in his first couple of years, he didn't have a pot to piss in. At defensively, not at all. It wasn't a great shooter, whatever. But he became like a dog, on the defensive end. It's what can I do to help Purdue win basketball games? Yeah. And then it's 2 years all defensive team, defensive player of the year. So you can develop excellent defensive habits and make yourself much, much better. And once again, he's only a sophomore, a true sophomore at that. So it's a big step up. He had a lot to be asked from the offensive end. A little bit different expectations this year. Once again, came out of the gate. We did really, really well. And when that happens, you're flawed. You're never as great as you appear to be. There's always flaws. And nits to pick, as some would say.
Yes.
You see that in that podcast, maybe way down the road.
Never see it. You'll never
Picking
see
nits,
it.
yeah. You might
never see it.
Maybe not. He'll say it again. That's fine. So that's foreshadowing, maybe. But
maybe a T-shirt.
Maybe a T-shirt. Picking nits. So, anyways, like, you know, that skill can be developed. That can be taught. Like, you know, where you need to be. I think really fully understanding the scouting report. I know he goes through all those things. If I may interject, I'm the one talking, but, you know, just add to that what you said originally. That point I want to interject is that I actually think that Purdue might be a little bit bored. I mean, I know that sounds like a little silly. I don't want to say bored, but it's like complacent might be a better word.
Maybe.
You know, not because it's like they've got a big lead in the Big Ten, or at least it was very big, and now it's a little bit less. You know, it's more it's more surmountable at this point. Clearly, looking at the schedules moving forward, certainly might have played themselves in a position where you might be sharing a Big Ten title. You know, if you don't really close out the deal. I mean, they won at Illinois. It doesn't matter. Wisconsin's now, you know, mathematically, it's only Illinois and Purdue, right? That's pretty much it. That's where we're at, even with today's loss.
Yeah.
But I just think, like, you go on the road, you go through the motions. They actually have normally a pretty sleepy crowd at Ohio State, I've heard, for several years in a row. I think they came out a little bit better today, you know. And it's just one of those things where it's like Purdue really, I believe, is focused for the NCAA tournament. They want to hit their goals along the way. They want to win the Big Ten regular season. Of course, I think they want to win the Big Ten tournament. I don't think that's going to beat them up one way or another. I think winning the Big Ten regular season title has always been a bigger deal in the Big Ten than the Big Ten tournament. I think if you look at Big East tournament, ACC tournament, I think some of those tournaments, you know, historically, Big East tournament, that's a big deal. That's probably way more important than winning the regular season Big East, if I had to guess from the things I've heard. But I think winning the Big Ten regular season, going back to like the Heathcotes and Izzo's there, or, you know, like Bob Knight, Gene Cady, you know, all these people, you know, Dr. Tom Osborne in Iowa, going way, way back here. These people wanted to win, you know, Lou Henson, win Big Ten like regular season titles. And of course, they didn't have them. So they didn't have the Big Ten tournament for like a lot of the duration of some of those coaches. But like, that's where that got ingrained. You know, we were a little later to the party than some, but, you know, earlier than some others too. And as far as the, you know, the conference tournament goes, but, you know, I think Purdue really wants to win the Big Ten. I don't want to say like pace themselves, but like, you know, they peaked last year way too early. And you know, there's a lot of talk right now, like, you know, how UConn's looking so great and doing this and doing that, unbeatable and all that. And I hope they keep on hearing that stuff and reading all that press clippings, because like when you're the defending national champion and everybody keeps on telling you how, you know, we're not editing this, but how well endowed you may be time after time after time after time. Well, guess what? Like eventually you start to believe it. And in some cases it's not true. We all can't be Peter Norths, if you will. So I'm just trying to add a little spice. I don't know if you can change the Fletch to Ron J, but if you can, that'd be great. No big deal. You know, good times. But
I think he's
canceled. What? He's canceled. Well, you know, hard to say.
Maybe he is.
But anyways, like going on, you know, like this Fletch tangent here, I think he certainly brings a lot to the table. I don't see him as a total defensive liability, but within that, he has to be very aggressive. And he did that in spots and didn't make some shots today in that process. But I always feel like his offense affects his defense. And maybe not always, but it happens often. And he's maybe in a little bit of mini slump, you know, like he's one of those kind of players that like once he gets off of that pop up, he could go 9, 10, 12 games in a row where it's like he bangs out 5, 6 threes a game. Like he has that capability, you know?
Yeah.
And yes, big Wieners. That's German for exactly what you think it is. But anyways, you know, it's one of those things where I feel like Fletch, I feel like he does need to be in the starting lineup, no question. But I do think that he might need to have a little bit shorter leash if it's not banging. He's not doing the things that exposes other teams. If you're not putting other team in a bind with your skill set, they're putting you in a bind with their skill set.
Sure.
And that's a net negative, and you can't have that. You
got to be a net positive.
Yep, absolutely.
One thing about complacency, I really don't think that's the case. I mean, I'll stand by what I've said with this Purdue team, and I just don't think complacence in their DNA. I don't think the coaches allow it, and I don't think that what the core of this team went through as far as the end of the last year. I don't think that they're going to take the eyes off the prize. What I think we're seeing is not complacency, but I keep going back to it. I think that they have a target on their back. And in some cases, defensively, some players have not stepped up or shown the ability to, kick it to another gear, in aspects of their game. And honestly, we could go through every game and watch every second of defensive film, and it may be the same. It's just maybe Fletcher had 20 that game, and it, nobody was talking about it,
Yeah.
So I think that everything is magnified when he's not hitting shots. And, with my Kaufman rim groupiness, I saw my share of Fletcher Lawyer in high school as well. He actually played Braden in the regionals in high school. And you had told me about him first, and up to that point, I hadn't watched him play. And that regional game, every shot did not go in, but
sorry. Who is this? My apologies. I was getting
Fletch.
Oh yeah.
And you put me on to him, and then I was like, oh, this will be a good opportunity to see what's going on here. He looked like a white Ray Allen as far as how he stroked the ball.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he didn't forget how to shoot last night. I think that what can happen easily, though, is it's a fine line. This is nuanced, as I was saying with him. You got to be careful as a coaching staff with a kid like this for many reasons. One reason, if you start messing with his confidence, and he may seem to be unshakable as far as your confidence, but this isn't a type of kid where you yank him out of the starting lineup so easily. You got to put some thought into that if that's in your mind, because you may be doing a lot more harm than you think. It's maybe come off the bench and you're the number one option and we'll find you get easy shots. And I said that earlier, honestly, on the phone.
Yeah.
When I said it, I'm like, it's just if he's the same player offensively and defensively that he's been all year, and his shot's not falling, that's, by that logic, you should have pulled him, in game 2. Now you're doing it during a tournament run. Yeah. That's probably not smart.
Yeah.
So you got to stay the course. I think that the other thing with him is that you have to be conscious of, he's the kind of kid, and we touched on this earlier, talking, he's the kind of kid, if he gets a bad vibe, there's a lot of talent coming in next year.
Yeah.
You may, and I don't know this, but that might be a kid that hits the portal, for another opportunity. If you play your cards wrong here, I think that for many reasons, you have to, you can't be so reactive. I guess that would be my message to everybody on the message boards on Facebook,
absolutely,
Twitter,
exactly.
Let's get,
say a lot of dumb crap.
That's fantasy basketball.
Exactly.
That's a video game. He's not hitting a shot. Let me put this person in, and then there's no problems. No, there's a human side to this, and there's egos, and I think you made the point where you don't feel like he would, he would be ever lose confidence, and that's great. If that's the case, but in many regards, it doesn't matter. His confidence doesn't matter. It's his teammates' confidence in him making defensive plays, making shots.
Sure, yeah.
And if you neuter him in that way, you've taken you've created a much bigger problem than it was just writing it out and because I don't think he's a different player. I think he's a year older, and I think that you're going to get those spike games from him. Maybe just live with the fact that you're going to have these spike offensive games, and you need to understand that you need to use your defensive abilities and help, when he's on the court, and enjoy, his spacing that he gives you on offense.
Absolutely.
And I think that's it.
Yeah. I think there's like a certain level of the connectivity. I completely agree with you. The cohesion, the chemistry, you don't really want to upset the apple cart, certainly on this team, because like they have all the pieces to win the whole thing. They have what it takes to get it done. So you don't really want to upset somebody that way. And first of all, like, we can all sit here and speculate all we want to. And as much as I know about Purdue and closely I follow and people I know that are very close to the program, none of us are Matt Painter, and we really have no damn idea what goes on as far as like what he sees. I mean, like, he's a top 5 coach in the country. I don't care what anybody says by any measure. And I mean, if he had tournament success, he'd be in the same breath as like the Izzos and everybody else that people always just go on and on and on about. That's his biggest hang up. But if you talk to anyone that is like a parent, or that he is recruited, or anyone that's all the basketball boards he's on for like Olympics or USA basketball or any of that stuff, or the college game itself, he doesn't ever do anything that doesn't improve the sport of basketball. And he's as real as it gets. And so in those regards, like, he sees these people every single day. So if he thinks that Ethan Morton should be in the game, there's a reason why. He's very good defensively. Even if there's been times where obviously he might be limited offensively, maybe it's certainly reps or whatever. It wasn't a bad high school score. It's just a little bit different, and his roles, diminished here in those regards. But like, even if they're plugging him in defense and somebody else back in for offense, like, there's a method to the madness that Matt Painter does. And nobody here that will watch this podcast, or Josh or I or anybody else, knows what his game plan or what he sees on a daily basis. And they're the ones that make, him and the other assistant coaches are the ones that, are making the decisions. And I can assure you, as much as any of us think we know about basketball, Matt Painter's probably forgotten 10 times more things about basketball than I'll ever know. And I feel like I know a lot. So, I mean, or
Ethan Morton witnessed a horrific crime that Matt Painter committed.
Well, there is that. There is always that.
There are a couple people in this household that would subscribe to that theory. Stronger opinion than me, my wife.
Well, she's not on the Ethan Morton bandwagon then.
No, she's. It's either he's the human victory cigar, and she's like, oh, good, nobody's going to get hurt, or are we trying to lose the game?
No, I'm a firm believer.
I know
that is pretty human victory cigar.
It's comedy. You should watch a compilation of Ethan Morton minutes with her. You'd be entertained. I mean,
I hope to get the opportunity to do that.
Ruthless comments.
That's pretty funny. Yeah,
it's hilarious.
Yeah,
he's not a fan.
No, clearly not.
His liabilities.
Yeah, fair enough. Well,
she contends that he makes Lawyer look like Gary Payton on the defensive end. But
is that how she feels? Noted. That's pretty funny. The glove. It's not bad. But yeah, so obviously, this game wasn't what we'd hoped, but I am a for, and like I said, I don't think it's like complacency within. I think it's more like, of course they want to win and go and play and kick some ass out there like that. I mean, and 9 times out of 10, they can just go and do that by playing, a B plus game. But when you go on the road and you hit some adversity and some things, and you take a little bit too late to wake up and get your act together and maybe not even be like, let some of those plays go off their back. There's a lot of times I noticed, and we did it a little bit last year, but there's a lot of times where it's like, I saw somebody clearly get fouled. The refs don't call a foul. You're sitting there, you're watching, you're logging back on defense because you're still complaining about a foul not getting called. I think it becomes pretty obvious very early in a game that if the refs are going to call things a certain way or completely let the game be played a certain way and they're not going to call that foul, or they're clearly not calling fouls that are egregious that go against you, sometimes in a game they're going to call the stuff, and sometimes they won't. And sometimes it's a mixture of both, or a mixture of the first half they're going to do it that way. The second half, they'll even up the fouls. That's a human nature thing. And anytime these officials go on in the road, a lot of times if they're not particularly excellent officials, or maybe they've got large bank accounts from Bovada, hard to say. I don't really know. But there's could be some, tampering. I'm not going to say Donaghy, but I will say Donaghy anyways. But there are times where it's like, some egregious stuff. Like there was an instance in this game where the Ohio State, we were making a big comeback and cut it to like 5 or 3 points. Ohio State dives on a ball, rolls over the ball, half his body's out of bounds, looks at the ref, has tried to signal timeout as the ball is rolling underneath him on his stomach, and then he's out of bounds, and they award him with a timeout. And I don't know where you're from, but I feel like that's a travel or out of bounds. Clearly. And so to me, it's like there's a ref right there, and I'm like, I feel like you should get fined $10,000 or suspended for a couple of games. Ref, like you can't ref. We won't let you ref till February 25th. Like let's make an erroneous random date. We're like, if that is what you see out of that play, then you can't have it. And it's a big momentum play, and it's like I couldn't initiate probably any better, but it's just one of those things where you can't have those egregious plays, especially when they're momentum killers in a spot. And you shouldn't. And if you're Purdue, you shouldn't be even in that situation where that play even matters. So that's one of the biggest things I have with it. So it's like you can't really, and I sit there and I'll complain a bitch about the officiating a fair amount, at my TV or if I've gone to a game in person, if it's something that's really egregious, and everybody thinks like, hey, we should get all these calls. Like, I get it. Every person, team, or their fan could look at a foul call, depending on what team it's on, is how they're going to perceive it 9 times out of 10 anyways. But I just think that I saw a lot of players kind of complaining about a foul that was not called. And my point is like, if they're clearly not going to call it, why don't you go and take the action to them? And like, you know what? You push back, someone else has got to go motivate the other players and like kick their ass, take the fight to them. And then the rest will be forced to call fouls because they're like, oh, we got to the game's getting out of control.
Well, as a coach, the response to that is not a direct, yell at the refs, and certainly at the youth level. And I think that it can be effective at any level. Players don't just go play.
Yeah.
But as a coach, you have to let the referee hear you talking to your players. Hey, they're letting us play. You go to it now. In a referee's mind, like if I don't get a hold of this, get this under control, this game's going to get out of control and it's going to be on me. Like, so I did nothing wrong as the coach saying that, like, hey, they're letting us play physical. Make sure, you hit them on the way, call them out that way. Make them think about it, like that you're aware of it. Because they've never, ever gone and changed the call after the fact, outside of a review,
Yeah.
And so you're really just wasting your time and you're wasting your energy.
And Painter's not the kind of coach that it's going to go and get a technical to prove a point, even though, which I think it could help you in certain instances. In certain instances, it can derail your team and then you get blown out. I mean, because now they either might look at it as you got showed up. Sometimes when Gene Katie would do it, it's like he could never get a damn another call again. Sometimes he did it and they're like, yeah, you're right. We don't want to hear you bitch anymore, and so like they'll start changing some calls, but it's like, Matt Pitter does not want. I mean, he works a ref like every other coach works a ref, right?
Yeah.
Some are way more demonstrative about it. Some will go way out on the court. Some will act like, more or less total crackheads, like, I don't know, one of the coaches that might be one of the top teams in the country right now. We can all probably figure out who that is. There's some that'll grab players and do all kinds of weird stuff. There's no place for that. I mean, I'm saying like grab players like go on the sideline, like out in the play. That's actually happened. And somehow that's not a technical or whatever. But it's like, Matt Painter's not really wired to go and be like, show up a ref, because it doesn't get you anything.
It doesn't.
Long term, especially, you might get some calls that game, but what's going to happen is you're going to build a reputation for someone that shows up refs, and then you're going to get a lot fewer calls. So
refs, yeah, and that's the thing. Like that's the thing that's always been silly to me. And I'm in no way on this level, but I have found over time as a coach in youth basketball, and I know it's the way that this way in college and pro, like those refs have no other friends. All they have to talk to are each other. Yeah. So if you treat a ref like shit and they're an asshole to them, like,
they're all against you.
Yeah.
They don't work together a lot. Like
even if others are indifferent about you, like they're going to take into account how another ref feels. And if
Yeah, we've got to stick together.
Yeah, it's really counterproductive.
I mean, 3 on 18,000.
Yeah, it's just you got to play your game, and the fortunate thing with Purdue is they are good enough that it really shouldn't matter most nights.
Yeah.
But in most of the time, it finds a way to even itself out. But like I do think, and we've touched on this before, and we'll see kind of how it ends up. And I think that it has the potential to be a big deal in the tournament. How Edey is,
sure, yeah, we'll definitely have a big deal. How he gets officiated.
Hasn't seen him yet.
Yeah.
If you get a non-Big Ten crew and they haven't seen it, that, and they're just like, man, I can't call a foul every possession because True TV has a game on. We've been directed, like we got to stay on schedule. Like, that's kind of that's a real thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So I don't know. I got to think that it'll work out, but there is it's unique. I think Purdue's in a unique spot as far as having a legitimate gripe every single game. Outside of the calls that can go either way that are missed, like hold my beer. Like we have this monster here that gets hacked every second, and you are quick to call it over the back because he puts his hands up and just it's not
because it's almost like they're trying to like break the narrative that he doesn't foul. Yeah. But it's like there are a lot of times when they call a foul, like he really didn't even foul on that play. He's just gigantic.
Yeah.
He fouls plenty, I'm sure. But I can assure you he does not foul as much as he gets fouled. That is 100%.
I don't see him initiating contact ever.
He does occasionally. He had one today where, he definitely popped up, landed on the guy, but it's like few and far between because he has excellent body control and he really goes straight up a lot, So like, and I think the biggest thing is like, if it has to be fair, a foul is a foul is a foul. So like, you can't penalize someone for being 7'4" and a guy 6'7". Like if the 6'7" guy has to go over the back to get a rebound over Zach Edey goes over the back, it's a foul.
Yeah. It's
called boxing out. It is what it is. You have to come up with other ways. Like, grab him. If you don't do your work early against Zach Edey when he's on the offensive end and posting, it's over. You're done. So like you have to get it done there, and then you have to really collapse on him and hope they don't call him. And like I said, when it's a perfect storm of things, the good news is Purdue will not be playing any NCAA tournament games on anybody's home court. So kind of segue into this.
Michigan.